So we want to run the port scanning tools against hosts on the network to determine whether the firewall properly detects the port scanning activity. We want to ensure that the mechanism used for testing and filtering at the routers and firewalls respectively cannot be bypassed using particular source ports or source routing methods. Ensure that the router, IDS, and firewall firmware are updated to the latest releases. That's very important. And we want to use custom rule sets to block down the network and block unwanted ports at the firewall. So if there's any ports that are open that we're not actively using, we want to close them. Don't leave anything open that you're not using. You want to filter ICMP messages. So we talked about ping doesn't always work. Here's why, because we're going to filter those out. If we need to do legitimate testing, there's other ways we can do it. We talked about HPing and stuff. We want to migrate away from ICMP. The attackers will commonly use it. And then if you see a lot of that traffic coming to your network, you may want to investigate it. Perform TCP UDP scanning along with ICMP probes against your org's IP address space, and check that the network configuration and its available ports. Check the network configuration and its available ports. Make sure that everything's right. We use all of these services, therefore all of them need to be open. Ensure that the anti-scanning and anti-spoofing rules are configured. Make sure this stuff is turned on. So what happens typically, this is very typical, so when you guys and ladies mature into CISO spots or something like that, you want to make sure you don't make these same mistakes. What happens is I will go out and purchase an appliance. I'm being told to watch the budget, watch the budget, watch the budget. You'll hear it day in, day out. So you go and purchase just a tool just big enough to do the job. But what you didn't think about was that when you turn on all of the scanning and anti-spoofing and anti-scanning and malware analysis detection, that it eats up the CPU and RAM in the device, and now the device is not big enough. It'll handle the throughput on a normal day without that turned on. But with that turned on, you're going to start losing some other functionality. You're going to start dropping packets and things like that. So that's a big problem. So make sure that you oversize the devices so that you can enable the anti-malware stuff and analyze the traffic coming through at your egress point all in one stop-shop box. Or you're going to need to get a small one just big enough to do the network stuff and then put another one behind it that can handle the anti-malware stuff. So scanning beyond IDS. So we've talked about intrusion detection, firewalls, things like that. We talked about ports, and now we're going to go beyond the intrusion detection system. So IDS evasion techniques, okay? So how do we get beyond? So we kind of got that a little messed up. How do we get beyond the IDS, right? So we're going to, now we're through the firewall. Now how do we get by the IDS? Well, this is what we're going to talk about now. How do attackers get by your IDS? Intrusion detection systems, like Snort, things like that. Things that are looking on the traffic. They're looking at the traffic and saying, "Up, that looks suspicious, pluck that out. Up, that looks suspicious, pluck that out." So the way we use this, one technique is to use fragmented IP packets. And we talked about DOSing systems, anti-DOSing systems, will reassemble all of the packets before they're forwarded, okay? It will reassemble everything so that you can't do this. You can't chop up a bad file into little pieces where, in other words, when I look at just the one piece, there's no signature match because it's only part of the full file, right? So then you sneak it through in fragmented packets. So normally fragmentation happens, but what we're gonna do is we're gonna make it even smaller. So right, normally if I can fit this file into 2 packets, which is not realistic, but it's just an example, normally I could fit it into 2 packets and send it on and it would get through. But now we're gonna chop it up into 600 packets and then we're gonna push it through lots of little pieces. It won't reassemble that on the other end. You can spoof your IP address when launching attacks and sniff responses from the server. So you just tell it, hey, I'm not this IP address, I'm this IP address, right? And then you can use source routing if possible. So you can use source routing against the network. You can connect to proxy servers or compromise Trojan machines to launch attacks. This is very common. So many places get all in an uproar about sending out messages, hey, you're touching my network illegally, rah, 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 rabble, rabble, rabble. But the problem with that is that those aren't the people that actually launched the attack. They're just an innocent bystander / victim, right? So you can let them know that their stuff is hacked. So it's still good to send the letter, but just understand that they're not necessarily the ones necessarily that are attacking your network. So another thing you can use is something called like private internet access, PIA. You can use those. That VPN service is super cheap, $50 a year. And then you can connect in many different countries and attack the network and kind of see how it behaves. Does it allow traffic from Russia? Does it allow traffic from France? Does it allow traffic from, Thailand, wherever you're coming in from? And then you can connect from San Jose or Florida or Texas to kind of hide your real IP address, right? So if you're going to attack a network like Amazon, for example, don't use the company's address because it might get blacklisted. Use another address where it won't matter.